Hey guys, this is Dr. Sean over at the Center Path, and we're going to go over some things that happen in meditation. Can meditation be harmful? Meditation, if the application is incorrect, there's a lot of factors that go into the meditation and mindfulness process, and they're all very individual. I'm going to be reading from a couple different articles and adding in a couple of things that I think are important to understand. Having practiced meditation for over 30 years and teaching it for almost 20, I've seen lots of these things actually happen with people. Now, some of them are drug induced, some of them are people that have pretty severe psychological issues already, and or whether they're acute or chronic, that makes a big difference. And those can cause problems when we focus on those themselves. So what are some of the symptoms that people can get when they're doing meditations? They find that they're having issues with them, and they find that those can be disturbing. So numbness feelings, maybe in the fingers, the toes, or even the whole body, agitation, doubt of your practice. That's an easy one, right? We always have that one. That's a simple one, and we can work on how to get rid of it. Teacher, doubt in your teacher, doubt in life itself, doubt in your practice, doubt in anything. Leg pain, back pain, sleepiness, you become sleepy. And people worry about this when they start to fall asleep in meditation. They think that it's not working or that they're not working as hard as they should. Also, insomnia. Sometimes you'll keep yourself awake at night by meditation processes. Okay, we'll get into that too. Chest tension or panic attacks. Panic and panic attacks are very, very common, and that has to do with the breathing patterns too. We can get into those, and we're going to look at that a little bit too. Nausea, feelings of withdrawal, disgust in the mundane, the average everyday world. That's a very, very common one. Very important distinction to make actually in the meditation process. Many of us get imposter syndrome about our jobs, about our relationships, about our life in general. Loss of interest, loss of joy, stress, addictions, or addiction relapse can happen too. People try to use meditation and mindfulness as a part of their therapy regime for working with addictions, and sometimes it can cause some issues, and that's why it's always important to work in a group too. Um, Chronic pain, mood disorders, psychiatric disorders, hyperarousal means that everything is really over vivid and just kind of overstimulating. That's also a very common thing. I've had that experience myself. Trauma flashbacks, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, really like extreme visuals in those, emotional instability, hypersensitivity, disembodiment, disassociation, sadness, paranoia, what's called Zen sickness, ear ringing, okay, heat or cold feelings, sometimes sweats, fatigue, empty emotional, emptiness, return of repressed memories, memories you didn't even know you had. Then you have to decide whether that's real or this is not real. Guilt, negativity, dizziness, loss of hope, suicidal ideations, and fear. So, in this, kind of one of the things that we like to also get into, and you'll hear a lot of times, the obstacle becomes the path. Okay, so that means that these things can become some of the process if we apply them correctly, if we work to have meditation be of our benefit. It takes time, people. That's why it's called a meditation practice. But let's go into the beginning of this article. I wrote it in my blog, and it's just a commentary that I did on an article. It was a new study written in 2020. Does Can meditation cause you harm? So potential side effects are often front and center in the considering taking mental or physical mental conditions. When you take medicine, yeah, you're always looking at the side effects and what other things can it affect. Now we never ever know all of them, even the ones listed on the paper. If you open up a medicine and you pull out that giant paper with a really microscopic print, it's going to have a lot of different things that possibly could go wrong. And that is only with people or animals that have never or don't take anything else with it generally. Okay, so you can have other things too. If you're taking other medications, you may have to watch out for some of those. Meditation and mindfulness cannot be studied on animals. You cannot do actually double blind studies very easily because every person's psyche, every person's brain makeup, and their chemistry is so unique. Now, we try to make huge generalities of things, and yeah, those sometimes work, but people have very uh, intimate and intricate version of everything that's going on in in their heads and everything that's going on with their lives. Now that has to do with, if we're talking about Buddhism, we're looking at the five aggregates, and that's going to be the body is very unique, right? So it is not the self, right? The mental formations, the consciousness, the feelings and perceptions, all of that stuff is actually unique. For example, I'm a little bit colorblind, so my perception of the world is a little bit different, especially when I see yellows and greens. For you, it may be green. For me, it's going to be a little more lime color, or maybe even a little, not even gray. It's not gray. It's just I can't tell the difference between the two very easily. Okay. If your pills have a set of chemicals that we can isolate and know exactly their attributes and it affects on the human physiology. Thoughts or lack of thought, as some people understand meditation, does not have the same effects on human physiology. Thoughts do have effects on physiology. You can think yourself into a panic attack. Okay, popular media and case studies have recently highlighted negative side effects from meditation, increase in depression, anxiety, and even psychosis or mania. But few studies have looked at the issue in depth across large numbers of people. Well, that's because most of the time it's hard to find large numbers of people that practice the same type of meditation. And also, those people are usually uninterested in these kind of things. 2,600 years ago, uh, this kind of meditation started, which we call either samatha or vipassana meditation. It's well documented. It's empirical, of course, but that's the human experience is empirical. Gone to many practices. There are plenty of anecdotal and personal accounts of people who have indeed suffered and even committed suicide from meditating. I have a whole other series on that. The cinch pin is the method, the understanding, the process of meditation, and the teaching. So it's it's not just the teaching of what you do, it's how you do it and what you do with it, right? Okay, side effects of meditation. In a recent paper featured in the Journal of Psychological Medicine, researchers at the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison found that people who took part in the most common and widely available secular mindfulness program did not experience psychological harm at a rate higher than people in control groups who did not take part in the program. Interesting that they always seem to want to mention that there's a secular version of this. Now, it's very, very important that if you're in Buddhism and you want to practice Buddhism, that you actually practice Buddhism. You can't strip away sila, which is or any of that stuff. You can't strip away the morality of it in order to get some other benefit. It just doesn't work that way. It was set up that way originally. That's if you as you read, you'll find out more. Let's see. When we write a paper, it's most proper to have a good reference. For this paper, Prevalence of Harm in Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, it specifically states we find no evidence that MBSR leads to higher rates of harm relative to waitlist control on any primary or secondary outcome. On many indices of harm across multiple outcomes, community MBSR was significantly preventive of harm. So basically, the whole premise of this article is not much more than clickbait nonsense, I think, because it's really trying to cause distress in people who don't do MBSR, right, or any of those other kind of things, which is totally untrue. Okay, it's basically trying to cause distress in people considering meditation. Um, give fodder to those who try to debunk meditation as a viable and useful tool in psychotherapy, sociotherapy, and even pain control. So it's very useful. And of course, you're going to have outliers. You're going to have all these different anecdotal things that do occur either way. For example, back in the 80s and the 70s, Kundalini Yoga started becoming more popular. Now, there was a huge group of people that thought for sure that you would lose your mind if you didn't do it very correctly. Now, some people still think that, but here's what actually happened. In the 70s, people were taking LSD and mushrooms and marijuana or whatever they were going to take, and they would go to these events where they'd have a Kundalini event, right? And people would be meditating, and someone would have a bad trip, flip out, and run out of the room. Well, of course, what does the guru have to say? He can't say much. He doesn't, or she, they don't know what happened with that individual person because usually they just left. And they would say instead, it's because you didn't follow exactly my way and you hadn't done the prereqs and do the extra classes that I required you to do and pay for in order to get the best benefit and the only benefit. Otherwise, you'll have a mental breakdown. Um, I've been around meditation a long time, done a lot of it with a lot of people, many, many, many monks, and talked to them a lot about this kind of thing. I was wanting to get into Kundalini because when I grew up as a little kid, across the street from us, we had a family that were Sikhs, and they would do yoga on their porch every morning. And I wanted to go do it with them. My parents were like freaked out about it because it was a hippy dippy thing. That was in the 70s. Later on, I ended up getting into it a little bit. As meditation joins a growing list of treatment options for stress, depression, and substance abuse, so does the need to understand when it's effective and when it may pose risks. I do agree with that. I think that's a good idea. And I think that people that are unstable need more guidance. And what does it mean to be unstable? It means that they're in like an acute psychiatric or psychological issue at the time. You know, like extreme grief or extreme fear or extreme anger or agitation or depression or any of that stuff. It may be a better idea to get that all calmed down first and then start into meditation processes. And this is in quotes, with any treatment of any kind, behavioral or drug, there are two sides, says Matt Hirschberg, the 2019 National Academy of Education Spencer Foundation postdoctoral research and fellow at the center who led the study. What are the benefits and what are the risks of harm? The research on mindfulness meditation is overwhelmingly focused on the benefits. I think so, but I think because the benefits overwhelmingly are more numerous than any harm could be happening. This paper is intended to provide empirical estimates of, so again, empirical estimates of potential risks. Now, empirically means like on a person by person, on an individual assessment and an individual interaction outcome. It's like we talk about our experience. It's empirical. Okay, I agree that this is what I had to say about that. I agree that we need to honestly look at the possible harm in the practice of meditation, but not to overstate or blow it out of proportion. One of the problems I've seen in speaking to many that have practiced meditation in one form or another is, and teach for decades, that when someone does not have a good mental status to begin with, it can lead to more trouble, especially when many MBSR instructors have very little training. And the premise of MBSR is almost basically rumination without any moral teachings. So that's my opinion about MBSR because I've read a lot about it. I've done a few sessions with people, and all it is relooking at the things that have already happened and relooking at your mind as it goes. Now, your mind is a ruminating kind of machine. It's also a machine that's trying to give you sense of things. And if you don't have any stability or stair stepping to get out of those things, you're never going to get out. In Buddhism's version of meditation, which gave birth to the MBSR movement, and one of the main aspects of Buddhist teachings was abandoned. That is the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and dependent origination, or the Wheel of Becoming. It's also called samsara. The entire concept of those portray as sila, which is morality, basically. One of the most unfortunate things about this study paper, as well as the MBSR itself, is that a main aspect of meditation practice is also ignored. It is not really designed to deal with outright mental illness. Meditation practice is a very useful tool in mental health. There is a difference. So that's the other thing too. Is if someone, even if you start reading through the sutras and you look at the actual teachings of the Buddha and following people, the arahants and these guys, when we look at someone who's coming to get help, they're looking to be better than they are, yes, but they're not like in extreme stress or extreme um, uh, trauma at the time. Now, for example, the woman who brought her baby who had died to the Buddha to get revived because she was trying to, the Brahmins were trying to trick her and get her to bring it to the Buddha, and he would look stupid because he couldn't bring someone back to life, etc., etc. She ended up having to take a break. So what he did is rather than have her, well, just sit down with me, and then she would sit there and sob and whatnot, he had her go out and do something. It's activity based, it's action based, and that's also important, I think, in the meditation process. In the analysis, researchers examined the data from more than 2,150 adults who took part in a community health clinic mindfulness-based stress reduction class between 2002 and 2016. That's a good level. MBSR is a standard 8-week mindfulness program typically taught in person that is offered widely in healthcare settings. A good study size is not only okay, a good study size, yes, okay, but only one in sorry, it's only in one metro area and hardly representative of the population or even the meditation practitioner population. I was able to find that the people who what people in the paper were under treatment for and how they ended up in the MSR. So okay, let me reread that. Okay, a good study size, not only but only in one metro area. So this only happened in one metro area. So it's not really representative of people in general or people that meditate. And this was for people who were experiencing other healthcare issues. Now, we don't know what those are. I wasn't able to find what paper or what people in the paper were under treatment for, how they ended up in the MSR program. I mean, there's a reason they were there. right? Now, it could have been a cancer treatment thing, or it could have been depression, or it could have been substance abuse. We don't know. We don't have that information. The team looked at before and after results on a common assessment of psychological symptoms and measure of troublesome physical symptoms. They also included the data from 3 National Institutes of Health sponsored studies on MBSR that had people who were randomly assigned to control groups and compared harm in those studies with community MBSR. This allowed the group to examine the results and levels of harm in people who did not take MBSR. Okay, there's a slew of surveys out there for mental health. I did look at a few of them, and I was trying to find out, which one they were trying to use. There's a few of them that looks like they use because I looked at different studies as well. Um, there's no mention of which one was used in this case. I wish it was. That would have been a really cool thing to see. There's at least a dozen that I've seen since then. Several common, let's see, because there was no standard way to assess harm, researchers looked at several common measures of harm, including whether the average symptoms worsened, the number of people who reported increased symptoms, the number of reporting greater than 35% increase in symptoms, and clinically significant harm, or the proportion of people who reported a categorical worsening of symptoms. Okay, the scientific team did not find a single instance in which harm that was experienced by people in MBSR was greater than an increased negative symptoms experienced by people in the control group. So really there was no change in those. Okay, here's an important thing to take away from this article. There was not a single instance of harm. So we have to define what harm actually meant. Now, does it mean all of those things that I mentioned at the beginning of the video? Not sure. So does that mean it's absolutely safe? Not by a long shot. Okay, someone in severe mental disruption should probably not be told to do meditative practices with this, even with a seasoned teacher or coordinator. They should be evaluated properly and treated for any physical or chemical issues that are found first. Then and only then could a meditation practice be considered. That's my opinion. And I agree with that because if you're in like severe back pain or if you're in severe emotional upset, meditation is not going to help you. You need other stuff. There's many other things. Meditation is a calming thing for calm. Meditation is also to be used over time, not only when something goes wrong. Because one of the things that happens is if you use it only when something goes wrong, what happens is you start to uh, associate the meditative process with that stress. And that's a bad thing. I had a patient who was a transcendental meditation practitioner for over 40 years. He started in the 70s and he loved it. He was doing great. He was a very high pressure salesperson. He was extremely successful, all that kind of good stuff. But he was having a lot of stress and he was letting go of his meditation practice. And I was like, wow, why? What happened? And it turns out he would only start meditating when he was stressed because he was stressed all the time. That was kind of the other side of the coin. So he didn't take respite. He didn't go to enough uh, getaways or something like that. So he would get stressed out. He would start to meditate. His brain, his mind would start to associate his mantra and the sitting process with stress. So every time he sat down, he'd be more stressed. So it just kind of snowballed from there. That was not a very good idea, I think. Okay. Okay, so for instance, if someone presents with a serious and detailed suicidal ideation as they begin a meditation, it is likely that they may ruminate on why and how they will proceed rather than to find anything useful to really work on. This is also a very true thing that I've seen. So it's very difficult to get someone to sit down with suicidal ideations, for example, and stop thinking about that. So we need some other help. We need some other activity. We need some other kind of thing to just break that thought pattern a little bit. And then they can sit down and meditate because it's changed up a little bit. In addition, this is the article again, about half of the harm measures the researchers examined, rates of harm in MBSR were significantly lower than those with no treatment group. Hirschberg notes that these findings suggest that MBSR may not only be more harmful than no treatment, it may actually be preventative of developing increased psychological and physical symptoms. Be no more harmful than no treatment. So basically, you can do nothing or do MBSR. What's the difference? It doesn't really say in this. I would think that it really does do better in the long term. And the problem is people are thinking that 6 weeks will change your life. It may, but you need to really go way beyond that 6 weeks. And it's a process that becomes part of your daily routine. And whether that's 5 minutes a day or 50 minutes a day, it doesn't really matter. Now, my opinion on that basically seems to be a pitch for MBSR. I think so when compared to people who did nothing. This smells of fluff rather than academically serious research, and that's true. It really does. It doesn't really smell of that academic um, rigor that we need to see in these kind of things because it was kind of slapped together. But then again, it's a new field. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of new stuff happening, and it's very exciting. So this is actually really good information, I think. Back to the article. The researchers were careful to note, however, that more research of potential preventative effects is needed because most preventative effects were observed in comparisons between community MBSR and people in the research MBSR studies who received no treatment, a group that had significantly different levels of symptoms at baseline. Again, it depends on the group that you're looking at. If you're looking at a lot of people that have pain, it has to do with expectation and attention as well. Now, my opinion on that one too is if you read enough research paper, this is the rule. Always note that more research needs to be done. This is a staple of all research, as there is no research that definitively proves anything. There's always outliers, mistakes, small sample sizes, and amendments to be made. Not that this was it was not a good effort, but it's not the end for sure. I for one look forward to more research on the subject as well as collaboration between MBSR and other forms of meditation. This may help us gain insights on how the mind really does work and how it can be actively and passively helping to be a more healthy and skillful state of being. So still, Hirschberg warns, this doesn't mean that no one practicing an MBSR experiences harm. It remains important to expand and research uh, to understand the experiences of the small number of individuals who have had adverse reactions. He also noted that due to limitations in the data, they were not able to examine whether socioeconomic status or race and ethnicity were related to harm. The fact that incidents of harm appear to be low in MBSR is important because most mindfulness-based interventions are derivatives of MBSR, and it's the root of practices that we offered in schools, healthcare, and workplaces. It's really important to know the prevalence of people who are having adverse reactions. Yeah, that's true. Who are you giving them to and why? Okay, another question to explore further is subjective interpretation of harm. Again, that's the empiricalness, the uniqueness of each individual. Some meditation traditions temporary discomfort, negative thoughts, and unusual somatic experiences might be indicative of progress in one's practice. Yeah, they always are. I mean, again, that goes back to um, the idea that the obstacle is actually the process. The obstacle is the path. You got to get over this one thing. Now there comes a point where that's unreasonable, of course. If you can't sit in a lotus position, sit in a half lotus. If you can't sit in that one, sit in a quarter lotus. If you can't sit that way, sit in a chair. It doesn't mean you can't meditate. Okay, I believe that this is a spectacular point. In fact, there was a few different articles on this, and I have a good study that did expand on what we know. So I'll put that link. It's a National Institutes of Health article on different kinds of meditations. Distraction, this back to the article, is not always made clear enough. Oh, sorry. The distinction is not always made clear enough when we hear about causes of harm, says Hirschberg. Meditation practice means many different things, from intensive meditation retreats for months or even years to 10 minutes of daily practice at home. Most reported cases of harm were related to the more intensive practice. There are really different categories. We can't infer about harm in intensive practice from these findings, and similarly, we cannot infer about the potential harm in MBSR or similar programs from harm following intensive practice. So when you jump into intensive practice, what happens is you're changing everything, and that makes everything very, very raw and very, very right in your lap. And that, of course, can be a problem. That's a near psychosis, right, of changing everything in your world. You're getting rid of your phone, you're not talking, you're like going on a 10-day retreat where you don't speak and you're only there with your head. A lot of people spend all their time on this, and that's what quiets their mind because they're playing a game, because they're talking with people, they're getting a dopamine rush, and when all of a sudden that's gone, there's no more of that, and the brain comes forward, the mind comes forward, all that negativity can come forward right in your face. So that's a problem. So in here, I also mentioned that I'm curious as to what more intensive really means. The article here gives a great list of practices and does recognize that there are many different opinions and ways to meditate. On the one hand, I would consider an MBSR treatment class of 6 weeks to be pretty intensive for someone that can barely sit for a few minutes, right? Okay, this article was originally published in the Center for Healthy Minds. Um, let's see, I have a bunch of other um, articles that I've put in here for ideas. Okay, um, See, then I looked at Marianne Spoon. So she's the one who wrote this. Leads communications and marketing for the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she produces written and multimedia stories, coordinates with media interests, and the center's work and manages its brand and external-facing publications. Okay. Before joining the university, she conducted behavioral research with monkeys and worked as a freelance journalist for a media outlet, including the Discovery Channel, How Stuff Works, and Atlanta's NPR. Okay, so I liked I liked it. In this, there's some good advice. There's some questionable stuff. There's not stuff to be afraid of. Okay, I mentioned the problems that can happen. There's many more. I mean, people have like panic attacks. They have fear. They have dread. All of these kind of things. Um, Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss." So, as a remedy, stop and do something relaxing and nice. Make a meal, feed the birds, have a glass of iced tea, listen to music. So, we need to use meditation as not just a process of stopping, because you can't stop your mind. We need to use that meditation process as a process of reflection as well, and moral um, development, okay, and moral contemplation. So anyway, this is Reverend Sean, Dr. Sean, whatever, over the center path. You guys, this is my dog grunting down the bottom. He wants to go outside, so we're going to go do that. But you guys don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like if you like this. And I'm going to be doing more because this is part of our how meditation works and doesn't work process. I've been doing a lot of stuff with Buddhism and doing a lot with meditation. I find a lot more with meditation because uh, it can go bad. And so we have to be careful of that. But we have to not be panicky and not run away and freak out. And that's one of the things that causes problems. And that's what caused problems with a lot of people who are like evangelical Christians or whatever. They hear that someone meditates and they automatically think we're dancing in the forest underneath a full moon for the devil or something like that. But that's not the case. Meditation is good. There's tons of contemplatives out there, Christian ones too, that really explored the mind. And that's what we want to do. You guys take care. We'll talk to you later.